Good morning, everyone. This is Pat Kent of Raison d'Être Opera, and I'm so thrilled this morning to be talking to Frederica von Stade, known as Flicka. And I went to grad school in New York in the 70s and had a friend who studied at Mannes. Was a And her name was Gail. I wish I could think of her last name, but that's how I became aware of you and your career. And I think we are all. She was probably close to my age. Anyway, we were all in awe of you, and I'm so thrilled that you're making this pilgrimage to Minnesota. And it's so generous of you to be doing all of this for us. Um, so how did you get roped into this trip to Minnesota?
I had such a good time my years in Minneapolis, both with Dominic Argento and with the Met when the Met used to tour
That's right. Yeah.
in Minneapolis.
I used
I
to usher,
remember,
then you could get in free.
yes, I remember the parties and the hotels and it's just wonderful. And my son-in-law um, went to college there, so
Cool.
it kind of has a special meaning there too. So I've just had a good time and more I'm at the end of my career, obviously. And there weren't many chances to be able to work with my best, most adorable, wonderful, brilliant accompanist, Donna and Martin Katz. And I thought maybe we could just have one last little fling together.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so
You
excited.
know, and so we're doing two recitals, and then I'll be doing stuff with Donna, and then we're listening to lots of wonderful young singers, which I adore, because I have to study their repertoire ahead of time because, I only know the roles that I sang and
Which were a lot.
who sang a lot, who sang around me, but I'm pretty ignorant. So by studying the pieces, I get to learn about them, and I love hearing young singers. There's so many fabulous voices around now.
Really are.
So it's a thrill. So that's how it came about.
Wonderful. And for Raison d'Etre, you're going to be listening to more seasoned singers in our masterclass on the 17th.
Right.
And I just wonder if, you know, looking at kind of our musical scene in the US, which is, I think opera is trying to recover from COVID still. I
Yes, it
really feel
is.
that that's
You,
true.
you're absolutely right about that.
And I'm just wondering if you have any kind of philosophical ideas about how opera fits into our contemporary culture and um, particularly opera in English as opposed to the standard revered
Right.
repertoire, which we all love.
Right. I actually am very positive about what's happening in opera. I think, first of all, there are so many new operas out there, and they're wonderful. Now, I had the chance to spend a lot of my career with Jake Heggie, who wrote Dead Man Walking, and
Right.
I've been in several of that productions and other productions of his. And he's a very exciting writer,
I agree.
composer, and Ricky Ian Gordon, so, and these are the ones that are selling out,
Yeah.
the new operas, and people, we have a lot to look at through music in opera, and using our history and not always deferring to the well-known masterpieces is a very noble effort. And I'm very excited this wonderful man, Anthony Rolf Costanzo, is taking over Philadelphia Opera, and he's already got brilliant ideas. He's an absolutely brilliant singer, but he's also a terrific director and manager of ideas. And the more we incorporate who we are today as Americans, as the people of the planet right now, I think the more interesting it is for the public. And people are coming back. They really are. San Francisco Opera had an amazing season this
That's
year,
wonderful.
amazing. And that, along with the young artist programs who are turning out these brilliant young artists, I think it's very exciting. I really do. I think it's we're going in the right direction. We're incorporating everything there is about performing today. The reason it still stands, in my opinion, opera, is that it's the last place, almost the last place on earth where you actually hear voice, throat to voice.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is so electronic that it's deviated from the brilliance of the human voice. And
it's one
that,
step removed that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that particular connection is invaluable for all of us as human beings. Just that we have this to turn to, and it's important. It's very, really, really important.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I was part of Dead Man Walking when Minnesota Opera did it, and the director, whose name I won't be able to remember, every day reminded us what we were talking about. If there was an
right,
execution that day, he told us.
right.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think there's connectivity and to real life that contemporary opera can give us.
I really
Okay.
didn't.
Lucky you.
I mean, there were always the wonderful Italian tenors or baritones, and it's humanity, but no one ever crossed the line. And
It's great.
I have to say something in honor of a wonderful colleague, Placido Domingo. I feel we've been robbed of these last 10 years. And that's where sexism has gone to a place of importance that isn't always warranted. Placido, tell you a brief story. We did the oh gosh, Viglia, oh Viglia,
Yep.
what's the
Merry
name? The
Widow.
Merry Widow.
I
The Merry
saw it
Widow.
in New York.
Um,
Yeah.
and at the opening night, my husband and his father's girlfriend, his mother had passed away, were there, and Bill had he had he had a terrible shake.
Okay.
He had Parkinson's, early Parkinson's. And we were sitting at the table with Placido and Marta, his wife, and Bill knocked over a glass of red wine by mistake. And he was horrified. He was just so embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
Placido and Marta dipped their fingers in the spilled wine and blessed themselves and said, "You have brought good fortune and happiness to everyone seated at this table." And that's one little glimpse of who Placido is. And that's the way he always treated me. And, the workplace now, I mean, I think things do go to extremes, and I have great respect for anyone who has had to deal with the crossing of the line.
Mm-hmm.
But, since I was a teenager, people would make passes at you, and you part of it is learning how to deal with it. You've got to slap, you've got a knee. All of that can do a lot more than laws and lawsuits, and but I do not want to be respectful for anybody who has had to deal with any kind of that
Mm-hmm.
business. But I did not. I had nothing but wonderful, wonderful colleagues and partners, and I'm grateful for every one of them.
I'm really happy to hear that. Do you mind if I asked some of our I guess our raison d'etre fans if they had any questions for you, and there were a few questions about technique.
Oh, sure.
Do you mind if I hit you with some of those?
Sure.
And this is one of the questions I thought was really good. One of our friends asked, was there ever a time when technique came into conflict with what felt innate to you?
Um, Wait a minute, what felt innate to me? Well, I basically uh sang naturally, you
Mhm.
know, but when I did start to study at the Mannes College of Music, I had this amazing teacher named Sebastian Engelberg. And, I don't remember him, saying, no, you have to lean into it, push up, oh, I
Mhm.
remember him saying two things. And these stick with me every day of my life. He said, Flicka, you have to sing as though it comes from the bottom of your heart.
Mhm.
And that has been my guide. And the other thing he said was, I'd rush into a lesson and I'd say, oh, I can't do this and that. And he said, he was Viennese, he was from Austria. He said,
Mhm.
so for you, it should be easy.
Uh-huh.
It's a lot of work and there are a lot of ideas. And we're singers are at a slight disadvantage because we come to our musical experience, some of us, me for sure, later in life than most musicians. A pianist could not play a Rachmaninoff or a Chopin piece without the 15 years of
Yeah,
scales. And
absolutely.
but we can. If someone has a voice and an ear, you can teach them an aria in a couple of days or a week or a month, and they can perform it. And it's
It's a whole different process.
a whole different process.
Yep.
And um, so I think that makes us dependent on our technique. And I think technique is based on nature. The best we can do is understand how our body works. And my body might not work the same as Luciana Pavarotti,
Right, right.
Um, so it's it's always a collection of ideas. And I have such great and deep admiration, respect, and affection for all the teachers I've worked with. I just feel they give their heart and soul to each of their students. And I feel so blessed by the work I've done with them and what they've helped me to do. Because nobody gets out of a career without some bad periods and some bad habits. And, we're constantly adjusting. It's like ballet. You just got to keep listening to your body and trying things and figure out what works.
I think that's so true. And as a teacher, I appreciate you saying that, I feel like we really give all to our profession.
You do, and
Yeah,
you're not only singing, you're teaching singing, you're a shrink too.
there's that. There's that. And we're cheaper than a shrink usually too. Um, so this is another question from one of our friends who has appeared in our first production, and she said, as your voice has matured, do you approach singing with more abandon, or do you feel you need to act with more restraint?
Uh,
Do you feel like your technique has changed?
and to a certain extent, and I'm sort of excited about it because I am working with a very special person now who's helped me enormously. And it's, the voice ages, the muscles
Mhm.
around the voice age
Yep.
and everyone ages just as everybody ages differently. But what I've had to work on more than ever is middle voice
Okay.
singing.
Mhm.
The top sort of sorts itself out, but it's the middle voice and it's not pushing and it's all the same thing that I tried to do for years and years and
Mhm.
years, but it becomes more pertinent now.
Mhm. That seems right. That seems right. Um, I have another question from a younger singer. Um, and she wants to know how you would recommend balancing the problem of wanting to say yes to opportunities that come to you, when the repertoire might not be ideally suited for your voice, and that with being healthy in your own singing.
Well, I think a lot of that falls on your shoulders as a teacher.
Mhm.
And it also can fall on the shoulders of a manager or a coach as well. And, you develop over the years, and even in your early years when you're just studying, you develop a sense of who you really trust. And obviously it's someone who believes in you, but it's who you trust. And I recommend sticking with those 2 or 3 people.
Yep.
You as a teacher, a coach, and a manager, and take their advice. I always, always, always with young singers advise to not go outside of their voice,
Mhm.
to try and demand of their voice something that isn't, in the cards.
Yeah.
I can sing all the notes of Carmen, but I would never sing it because I don't have that kind of drive in the middle of my voice. My voice isn't big enough. It's it's it just wouldn't be wise. But I had Mr. Engelberg and my fabulous first manager, Matthew Epstein, to say, "Oh, please, no, don't do it." The safest bet for young singers is Mozart,
Mhm.
and Rossini and Handel, because it demands things from the breathing, the alignment.
Mhm.
It demands things that will never hurt,
Musicality. Yeah.
will never, musicality, of course, but will never threaten the voice with any distortion. But driving, as you know, driving your voice is, you sometimes don't come back from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Pat, excuse me 1 second.
yes, sure.
Oh no, he stopped barking. I'm at my daughter's house and their dog is outside. He barks at absolutely everything. So, but
We have
it
one
might,
like that in my building too. Um,
yeah. Oh,
so
there he goes. I'm just going to bring him in. Excuse me
okay,
1 second.
great. Hope you're all hanging with us for the puppy break.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
We're used
Now
to that Zoom
he's
call.
fine.
Yeah.
He's fine.
So looking at your career and your success with trouser rolls, um, how do you feel? Why was that able to work for you so well?
Well, that fit right into the repertoire I should have been singing.
Uh-huh.
It was, I mean, to begin your career with singing Cherubino is like heaven on earth.
Mhm.
It's you don't carry the weight of the show, but you can make 2 nice splashes.
Right.
And it's so much fun being part of that Da Ponte family.
Fabulous opera.
I mean, I think that piece in my heart examines every human trait. So the people in it are terrific people and terrific examples of so many different human emotions. So every time I sang it, way past the age of decency, um, it's like a new family. It was always new. It never was old. Never, 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 never. I loved every production. I loved everything about it, and I still do.
And that last scene where he asks for forgiveness and he is given. Oh my gosh. I like that's everything, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would be bold enough to say that I think that from all that I've read about Mozart, that Cherubino is very close to his character,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
So I think I always felt there was a special link there.
Yeah, no, it's just so wonderful. So did you prefer doing those or did you prefer doing heroine roles?
No, I love doing all my boys' roles because
Uh-huh.
I don't like so much being fussed over.
Uh-huh.
And in boys' roles, they kind of hand you your costume and put on a wig and that's it.
You do that.
Girls' costumes, there are layers and
Oh
there's
yeah.
wigs and but I certainly loved to play Mélisande because what girl at some
Yeah.
point in their life doesn't want to have 8 foot long hair, and hanging out a window. And then I loved all my girl roles too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Um, I have one question from another singer that I puzzled over this last night actually. She said, "How do you learn to love the voice you've got?"
Oh boy, is that a great question.
I thought so.
That is a great question. And it's a plague for singers. It is just, you know, it's like do you like photographs of yourself?
Nope.
Most people don't. They might readjust their face and everything,
Uh,
but maybe some people love it, but no, you have to make friends with your voice. And I've been singing over 50 years and I'm still working on that friendship. And
mhm.
when you're young, you tend to be impatient. And the word of the day is impatience. It really is. I mean, stories of Carlos who spent, 3 months learning a role, singing it every day with Serafine or studying it. And now kids learn it in 5 days and
I don't
listen
get
to
how that
every
happens.
listen to every recording. And you know, just like in ballet with first position, the turnout is not natural necessarily. So you have to practice it for years and years and years before it's second nature to you. And I think kids tend to be very, very hard on themselves, and singers in general tend to be hard on themselves about that. And they don't even start to understand or work on technique often until they're in their 20s.
It's true.
And things get harder when you're older. It's why I was grateful that I learned French as at a young age, because sometimes you do things you don't know they're hard. Like watching the Olympics and all those gymnasts,
Yeah, yeah.
that all started when they were 7 and 8 years old,
Hmm.
that they could even imagine that their bodies could do that. And very often, training before one knows it's hard. Once you know it's hard, you have a whole different set of mental needles that stick in you.
I think that's
Um,
true. I think that's true.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember finishing a grad degree in New York and then studying with this person. Had my lessons at the Carnegie Recital Hall building, the old one.
Well,
And
that's where I used to go for my lessons
did
too.
you? And I
Yeah.
remember that he was the only one who I got so frustrated with what he was trying to do that I would cry. And I don't cry. I'm not a crier. But
Right.
he
Oh,
was
that's terrible.
he no, but he was one of those guys who he'd been a soldier in World War II. He stayed in Italy and studied singing. And it was,
Yeah.
that you are gonna do this until you can do it. You're just gonna
Right.
be at it. And I think that was an older model of teaching. Um,
Right.
not one that I
Well,
practice, but um,
um, I'll tell you a cute story. There was a wonderful coach at Glyndebourne when I was first in Glyndebourne in the 70s, and his name was Yanni Strasser, and Yanni had on his piano a sort of it almost looked like a child's painting of two poodles.
mhm.
And I said, Yanni, why do you have these poodles on your piano? And he said, my darling, um, your poodles are your voice. If you are good to it, it does tricks for you. If you're bad to it, it bites you. And it's so
I
true.
love it. I love it.
It's so true. And that's what I mean about being willing to stick at something until you get it. And I'm part of I work very hard for a wonderful organization in California called Young Musicians Choral Orchestra.
Mhm.
And we take kids from 9 to 18 and train them in music, everything, opera, jazz.
Mhm.
They have
That's
to sing,
wonderful.
they have to play an instrument. And, you know, they can't do anything the first day they come in, the first week. And then you see that what you started on Monday, you couldn't do,
Mhm.
but by Friday, you can do it.
Mhm.
And that's that's the lesson of singing is, you know, a lot of it you figure out for yourself. Because I find that in my experience with Mr. Engelberg and with wonderful teachers I've worked with since, that when I walk in, I kind of think like it's their job to fix me,
Right.
you know, and it ain't. It's my job to fix me. They're
Mhm.
helping me to fix me.
Mhm.
It's a little bit like AA,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Here's your
you
sponsor
know.
for the week. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they you know they don't do they don't we lay our problems right at your feet when we come in? Well, I have to sing this C, but the C, it's hard and it, you know, and so tell me something and I can do it right away. Right. It doesn't work like that in anything. You
Nope.
don't sew a hem that way.
Yep. Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. I am so excited for your trip to Minnesota
Well,
and
thank you. I'm
all of
looking
the
forward to
wonderful
it.
things, the concerts and the master classes. And
Well, it's all thanks to Donna,
I know she's so great.
every part of it. And she's a mover and a shaker, and
Got so much energy. Yep.
her heart is in the right place
I agree.
always, always, always. I've she's just an extraordinary human being.
I agree. And everybody in Minnesota is very excited for your trip here and all the things that are coming up. It's going to be really
Thank
a lot
you.
of fun. It's going to be really,
Thank you.
I'm
I'm
very
looking forward to it.
excited to meet you in the flesh. It's going to be wonderful.
Thank you, Pat. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
All right. Thanks so
Bless you.
much.
Bye.
Bye now.